numbers continuing to rise, but why don't we get going? It's a little after 9 a.m. U.S. Eastern Time. I'm Bruce Delmonico. I'm Assistant Dean for Admissions here at the Yale School of Management. It's great to see you all. Thank you again for participating and for joining us. At whatever, this morning here on the East Coast, whatever time it is, whether it's earlier in the morning or later, middle of the day, late at night, thank you for taking part of your day to be with us today, for this international student panel. So I'm excited to have 5 current SOM students join me to share their experiences and their time here at Yale SOM. The hour is going to be devoted to just questions and answers and their perspectives of their time here at Yale. No presentation, no set remarks. I have some questions that I've prepared beforehand to ask them just to get things started, but I invite you all to share your questions as well. We'll try to get to as many as possible. Just use the chat function and feel free to just kind of put your questions in there, and I'll then try and translate as many as possible to pass them along to the participants, to our students, and see how much we can get to, hopefully as much as possible, and cover as much ground as we can, and share as much information about the school as we're able to in this hour that we have together. Before we get started, I would love it if the students would just take a moment just to introduce yourselves, to let everyone know who you are and who's on the panel, and what, what maybe a little bit about your background pre-SOM, your time here now, and then maybe what you're looking to do after you graduate. And maybe just go around. I'm not going to cold call on this session, but I see Nikita, unfortunately you have your camera off, so you're maybe ready to go. So maybe we could start with you.
Yeah, sounds great. So hi, everyone. So great to be here on this panel today. So quick introduction about me. Before SOM, I was in Bangalore in India, and I was working at Adobe in digital strategy and innovation. So I worked a lot in just the digital marketing space and worked with clients across different sectors to help them optimize on their digital marketing strategies using Adobe's product. And it was just really interesting. I really loved wearing the hats of business and technology. And that's when I realized that I want to really hone in on that holistic skill set. And that's what encouraged me to apply to business school. Now, at Yale, I'm involved in a couple of things. Of course, my tech background has kept me very close with the tech club. I've also enjoyed all my experiences with the consulting club, and being a South Asian, I feel like the South Asia Club has also been a very important part of my journey. So all of these clubs have been extremely, extremely valuable. There's also the Women in Management Club that is very close to my heart. I was a first-year leader of that club and really enjoyed being affiliated with it. After SOM post-graduation, I'm looking to move into consulting. So I did an internship over the summer at McKinsey as part of their digital practice. Because of my tech background, it's something that I wanted to, again, continue to work on. So that's where I'll be. I'll be at the McKinsey New York office after graduation.
Great. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. So Hamung, would you be willing to go next?
Sure, no problem. Hello, everyone. My name is Hamung. I'm the currently second year MBA student at SOM, and now I'm currently actually participating in an exchange program in Tsinghua University in China. So I'm now in Asia. Good to see everyone from Greater China region. So prior at the SOM, I was an entrepreneur and independent film producer in the US. And I have been always in a passion in storytelling. And one of the reasons, put me into business school, and especially Yale SOM, is to, hone my business skills and to have a better understanding on the strategy and also the business side. And post MBA, I will join a fintech company in China, a joint venture company called Express. It's a joint venture company between a company in China and also American Express. It's going to be based in China. And I did my internship in a startup company about NFT called Digital Arts NFT. So that was fun. So I did a lot of things in during my time at SOM. I was participating in the digital researcher at the Peabody Museum just across to SOM. So I worked there as a part-time for entire year during my first year. So that was very fun. So yeah, I'm happy to share more about my experiences and in SOM, and I will pass on to the next panelist for introduction. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Josh, I see you've unmuted, so maybe you could go next.
I just can't wait. Hi everyone. My name is Yasha Heinig. For my background, I'm really German, but I prior to SM, spent around 12 years in the UK. So I did my undergrad there and worked there for 7 years. So in terms of the industry I worked in finance, financial services, both like in the kind of investment research side of things, as well as in private equity. And I realized for my undergrad, which I did in biology, I always was very interested in the science part of things. And while I really enjoy working in finance and working with clients, working with different people, I always really wanted to go back to working with a product. I believe more in looking less on the return side and looking more into products that might or might not make an impact on people. So I wanted to do my MBA, wanted to pivot into a different industry, pivot into a different geography. So I actually over the summer I interned in a pharmaceutical biotech company called Vertex in Boston in their marketing team, working on non-opioid painkillers, which was really, really interesting and very cool, where I will be returning after the MBA as well, working in the team, currently, working on negotiating my offer. So that's an interesting part I'm working on right now. But while at SOM here, both last year and this year, I got very involved in the SOM rugby team. This year I'm a captain there, so that's for the extracurricular side of things when I'm not busy studying and working on things. I'm playing rugby. Last year I also was very involved in the tech club, as well as the marketing club, general management club, and the healthcare and life sciences club. So happy to talk about any and all of that. Yeah, but excited to get the panel going.
I'm happy to jump in. Hi everyone, Roshni here representing Africa today. I'm from Kenya. And so prior to SOM, I worked as a management consultant. I was at McKinsey for 4 years in the Nairobi office. I took a year off to work at a healthcare tech startup and then came to SOM. So coming to SOM, I wanted to do a couple of different things. So one was just deepen my understanding of what it meant to help individuals and organizations, especially in Kenya, but in broader Africa as well, achieve their potential as a means to unlock growth. Deepen my understanding of what it meant to be a leader that could work on something like this, and also explore different sectors as I pivot back to McKinsey in Nairobi and think about where I want to specialize. So for this winter, because we're in the Southern Hemisphere in Kenya, I interned at an education nonprofit in Kenya that does fellowships for education innovators, and that was a lot of fun. While at SOM, I've done, a few different things. Right now, I'm leading a second-year leader for the Education and Africa Business and Society clubs. I'm also a coach at the Jackson School for Global Affairs. So as an executive coach, I found space at Yale to be able to keep practicing some of the skills that I brought to school. And my electives, I think, keep me fairly busy. I'm in, 4 classes right now that I absolutely love and would be happy to chat about.
Great. Thank you so much. And Renato.
Excellent. Hi, everyone. My name is Renato Carrega. I'm from Mexico City. I'm happy to be on this panel. Prior to SOM, I worked in management consulting for 4 years for a Brazilian firm. And then I did some startups. So while I was in management consulting, just because I'm a big nerd, I started Mexico's first crypto investment fund. And I then did some blockchain business consulting and eventually led a digital startup in post-cookie data collection. Over the summer, I interned at the McKinsey New York office as well, and I will very likely be going back there, but that's still, I guess, to be decided. Additionally, I'm a member of the ALAS Club, so that's a Latin American and Hispanic club. I am also involved in an event we call the Vatican Dinners that is held in my house, where we invite anyone in the School of Management to come for dinner once a week and get to know each other a little bit more. And one of my dreams in coming to the MBA, curiously, was to row. I wanted to row because that's not something you can really do in Mexico, or at least not as it's done in countries like the US. So after having never rowed in my life, I'm now one of the captains of the Yale grad crew team. So that's some of the things that I'm involved in.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you all for those wonderful introductions. Just a quick follow-up, Renato, is the grad crew team, that's across all the graduate schools, right? Or is that just SOM?
Correct. That is an SOM initiative, but that takes students from all grad schools, and actually also former students and members of staff. So that's good. And one thing, sorry, that I forgot to mention, but that is important. I'm also a member of the Out of Office Club, which is our LGBT group at SOM. So happy to speak about those topics as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. So it seems it's wonderful we have such diversity among sort of geographically, so students coming from all different parts of the world, although it seems like there's a McKinsey theme to a lot of us here. So that's kind of maybe a little bit of a common thread among some of the panelists here. And I just love to, we have so much ground to cover. Love to get your perspectives on so many different topics. And I want to start with maybe one, I know, Nikita, you touched on this a little bit in your introduction, but I'd love to start, for whoever wants to share, just basically like why you chose Yale SOM for your MBA. Obviously, all of you are looking to do different things. My joke about McKinsey aside, all of you are looking to do different things that have different kinds of impact. And I'm probably having some similar, maybe some different reasons for wanting to be here at Yale, but I'd love to get a few thoughts about kind of what it was that brought you here to Yale for your MBA.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. I'm happy to jump in and just elaborate on why I chose Yale SOM specifically. So I think there were two main reasons. One was during my when I was looking at different business schools and doing my research and talking to people, I really noticed like the power of the Yale SOM community. And that wasn't just through my interactions with, current students and alums, but my elder sister actually studied at SOM as well. And through her experience, I really saw the power of that community. I remember visiting New Haven back in 2016 for her graduation, and it just felt so familiar. It was everybody just came together, was really supportive of each other. It was a very tight-knit class, and I just remember thinking to myself that, wow, I want that. Those relationships really last a lifetime because you go through such an accelerated, intense experience together. And being in New Haven, it's a small town, a small community. It really helps deepen those bonds and relationships. And being here just for a year, I can vouch to the accuracy of that. I really feel like our class is extremely close and tight-knit. And I think there is a huge power in that community and those relationships that we built here. So that was one thing that really drew me to Yale. The second reason was around the mission. I think it does really have an impact, even though I came from a sector such as tech and I was working in the private sector. And I do plan to go back into the private sector, but I feel like the mission of SOM attracts a certain type of people. And it's really interesting to see how we can try and incorporate those values into like all walks of life. Like there's just a common thread of conversations happening at school and in our courses. And I noticed that in my internship as well. People had this common thread of just doing more than just working towards higher profits. And I think that, again, adds to enriching the experience overall. And those were the two main reasons that really drew me to SOM.
That's great. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. And so Roshni, I saw you unmuted, so I'd love to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, so I mean, Nikki's reasons definitely resonate, so I'm not going to dive into those. I think for me, some of the things that also drew me in were the fact that actually coming from 4 years at McKinsey, I wanted to go to a place that knew a little bit of what that meant, but maybe didn't have as many incoming consultants as some of the other schools where many of my peers from like my McKinsey offices were going. If I wanted to spend time with them, I could have just stayed on. I really wanted to expose myself to a diversity of backgrounds that could also help me contextualize my experience and help me think about what I want to do when I go back without necessarily having kind of too much context. And the other thing is, having spoken to a lot of people like Nikki did, who've, been to SOM before and just learning about the valuable experiences they had, not just at SOM, but also the network across Yale. So, people who took courses at Jackson or some of the other schools, it just resonated in a way that I didn't hear from like many other networks. And I wanted to be a part of that kind of broader Yale experience, which I definitely have, tapped into some of the other schools, which has been amazing.
That's great. Thank you so much. Any other thoughts to add?
I can share my opinion as well. So for me, a couple of things weighed in that were important, and I'll be very transparent here. One is, I think the Yale brand, right, is very powerful, and it has a lot of international recognition. In Mexico, for example, people will mispronounce it like jail, where you go if you behave incorrectly, but they will know, of its existence and know that it's a prestigious place. So I think that's a factor that also helped me. And the other that Roshni pointed towards, and I just want to emphasize, is the ability to tap into the broader university. So for example, this semester, all 4 of my classes are not in SOM, right? I'm taking cognitive science. I'm taking a intro to programming and computer science. I'm taking a film class, right? Which are things that you could not do in many business schools, and that I think really can expand your interests and your range.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's important. Oh, sorry, Hamang, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh no, I just I can jump in to add just a few points. I got a lot of questions from my friends asking me why I'm choosing SOM, and I just adding on top of Renato's point about the academic curriculum at Yale in general. I always tell them that consider Yale SOM as a platform that you can have access to all Yale resources. For instance, during my first year at SOM, I took classes at the divinity school, at the law school as well. So that really expand my vision and my knowledge that I would not be able to gain from any other business school in the States. So I think that's something I want to add on, and I really recommend and suggest candidate at SOM to try to take some interesting elective courses outside of SOM as well. And I think that will add on a very great experiences to your study. So that's just something I want to add on.
I mean, maybe I should probably add my opinion as well, but I'm not going to repeat what other people have said because otherwise we'll be here all day. But for me, I think another part as well is like I was moving with a partner who actually, funnily enough, got a job at Yale. So that, not limited, but that kind of constrained me down to the East Coast. So that was already a big factor for me. But I think the most important one for me was like any interaction I had with Bruce, the other admissions team, with a lot of alums, like everyone was really like not just nice, but really eager to help and remembered you. And it was like, I felt very personalized to me as opposed to as someone who usually smells kind of, cliches and things like that quite quickly, but people actually cared and people genuinely were interested in me and interested in me coming here and interested in what I have to say. And that's something that for me, like stuck around, not to like talk about other schools, but here it was really pronounced, and every alum I met was ecstatic to talk to me and couldn't wait to tell me all about their escapades and stories they had from us.
That's great. Thank you all for all those thoughts. And I really touched on a lot of different things. I'd love to, some great answers and some great insights. there are a few different directions I'd want to take the conversation and I want to start maybe more immediately. There was talk, Renato and Hamung especially talked about taking electives so elsewhere outside of SOM, and I think that's one thing that I think that's unique. The fact that you can take as many electives as you want. There's no limit to how many electives you can take outside the SOM. So I would love to get to the sort of the larger Yale community, maybe unpack that a little bit more. But I'd love to start with Yasha, what you ended with, which was kind of just the SOM community itself. And if maybe if I don't want to put Yasha you on the spot, but if you have additional thoughts, or anyone else has additional thoughts about the SOM community and what you've found and how you would describe it, and maybe some examples of things that maybe exemplify the community in your mind.
Sure, I can kick us off. I think the first thing I like is like it's tight knit. I know this is probably again like something you hear a lot from all different people, but I really do think that's true. It's like we have a good kind of size of school. Like in the year, you're on 350. I mean, with both years and all the other courses, we're looking at around 1,000 in total, which I think is very, very manageable. And especially in the class year, it's like not to say that one is well known or whatnot, but you basically manage to get to know, or at least get to know of everyone in the class, which I really enjoy. So it's not just kind of going to a room and realizing who are these people. It's quite nice to be in this familial space for that. I think it's also like, because we're in New Haven, we all kind of live close by. It's very tight as well. You can go around each other's houses. I think if you have a bike, no one's really further than 10, 15 minutes bike ride away, which is really convenient for whether it's studying, whether it's other extracurricular things, whether it's going out in the evening. It's all very easy to do. And I think that's something I really love. And like, if you ever, I don't know, for example, you're baking and you run out of sugar, you can literally walk next door and you have someone there to help you out. Or we've had the funniest kind of situations of someone saying like, look, I desperately need a plunger. Can someone help me? And literally someone there being within 2-3 minutes. I think that's it's almost like a family. And I know that's very cliche to say, but I really do believe that's true.
I think just adding on to what Yasha said, I always give the metaphor of New Haven being like a boat. So if anybody here has been to a party on a boat, they're usually a lot of fun because you cannot get off, right? And that's kind of the experience here. We're a small, we're a small town, and almost everybody here is doing things related to Yale. So if we were, I chose this in part because of this campus experience where you're here to do the MBA. Nobody's here because, oh, they already lived here and it happens to be where they're doing their MBA. So there's always activities, there's always people wanting to do things because we're on this boat together, and you either make friends or you'll have a bad time. So it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, I just want to quickly add a couple of more things there, just maybe examples in which a lot of these things that Yasha and Renato just spoke about. It's just that the intentionality that people have here to build community is also just, it's really special. It could be a function of not having too many options outside of someone's house and like New Haven closing, like establishments closing early, but a lot of people do like invite people into their homes. For example, Renato just spoke about Vatican dinners, which is something that I found really, really special and enjoyable when I came over sometime in fall last year. And so there are a lot of events that people do host, and it's just a very open culture it's very welcoming in that people invite others over to their houses for meals, like the Vatican dinners, or there's also now like smaller group clubs and events that people have started taking initiative just to build that community. So I think there's a lot of intentionality that people come in with. And I've really enjoyed doing those. It just seems like a very welcoming space where people want to get to know each other, especially for internationals. I've noticed that there's a lot of different avenues. Each club is really doing its part in building that community, and not just in terms of building the community for members of that club. It's also like opening it up to people outside of it. For example, the South Asia Club earlier this year hosted a cricket tournament, and that was a lot of fun. We had people participate from everywhere. everywhere. And it was fun to share that part of our culture with the rest of the world. And just like similar events like that are just student run and organized, that are really, really special in building community.
And if I can just quickly tag like one more thing on top of that, in terms of like including people as well, I think as someone with a partner, as like we also include partners very like, I wouldn't say aggressively, but like they're very much also they're around, like they're part of the community. They, you know, they have access to all the events and a lot of the resources we have. So they kind of, at least like maybe it's specific to my partner, but I feel like she's probably more well known than I am and probably more liked than I am as well. So they're very much engaged, and she has a good time here as well.
That sounds like that's saying something too, if that were the case. I don't know. And I'd love to sort of maybe build on that a little bit, because that is an important part of the experience for many students. And I don't know if anyone else has sort of thoughts or kind of experience with sort of the partner aspect of the program, and if you have the thoughts to share in addition about sort of how that's gone, or kind of aspects of that part of the experience.
If not, I'm happy to obviously jump in a bit more here. But no, it's like I think it's something for, like, to give examples. Like my partner, she's part of the SOM hockey team. We always have a very big bag full of gear in the hallway, and she goes every Wednesday. She absolutely loves it. Every time she comes back, or like in the morning, she's like, "Oh, I don't know if I'll go in the evening. It's so late. I'm gonna go." And then every time she comes back, she's like, "Ah, this is amazing. I've talked to this person and this person and this person," and I think it's always very involved. And even down to what I know from we're also part of the Partners Club. Literally yesterday we went to a trivia night with other people, both SOM students and their partners, generally very involved, people with kids as well. There also, we do things, I think for Halloween we did a little trick or treat event for children, of people like dressing up for the children, handing out candy. I think there's a lot of kind of support between the partners. Again, for someone on the rugby team, we have 5-6 people who are partners, who are like very, very involved, play a lot, come to all the tournaments, all the practices. So I think for me, it's sometimes even hard to distinguish of who's a student and who's a partner, because they all kind of blend in so quickly and so effortlessly.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you for expanding on that. And it is, I mean, that's consistent with what I've heard from others as well, in terms of sort of the integration of the partners into the life of the school, obviously outside the academic piece, but sort of the rest of the experience. And I know the pandemic was challenging on that front, but it's good to know that that's kind of reverted back to how it had been sort of pre-pandemic. I would love to, and just as an aside, not to share my own, I've often been participated in the hockey club as well. And actually it started when one year we admitted a class and brought in a class, and no one played goalie, and so the students made me play goalie because I didn't admit a goalie into the class. So I've been very careful about that, since then. I would love to. So Nikita, you talked a little bit about sort of the cultural piece and people coming from different cultural backgrounds, and that actually is one of the questions that came in from the participants, and it's a question of just maybe more broadly about adjusting to a new culture for those coming from outside the U.S. And I wanted to maybe, if any of you were willing to share your experiences of some of the challenges of a student coming in from outside the U.S. and any resources that you relied on to help you in that process. I think that could be sort of valuable insights.
I can kick us off if you like, Bruce. I think the regional clubs that many of the people on this panel mentioned are a very good resource. So we have those clubs, right, that are just social clubs. They have informal gatherings. Sometimes they have more formal meetings, but they get some funding from SOM, and we use it to do things like, I don't know, there was a Diwali celebration. We do a Mexican independence celebration. We had a Cinco de Mayo thing. We had a Day of the Dead thing, different types of events. And they are not necessarily formal in the campus type of events. They can also be, we grill in someone's backyard on a Saturday. And we do have a budget for this, which is interesting. So I've relied on that community a lot, and I found a lot of sense of belonging with the Latinos, for example, because I think there's a shared cultural understanding. And one point just to emphasize like the diversity of these regional clubs is that last year we actually had the emergence of a new Latino club, which is for American Latinos, right? For second, third generation Americans with Latino heritage, because they felt identified with one another, and they felt some points of differentiation from people coming from Latin America. So we had that new club, and it doesn't mean that they're not invited, everyone's invited to all the events, but it means that you can form these associations if you feel a void in having that broader cultural family.
Yeah, I can also just share a couple of things that in my personal journey have been really helpful. So I think something at the start of the year that I think the school does really well is just assign people to different learning teams, right? As part of your core curriculum in your first year, you will be put in a team of people that are typically very different from you. It's I think the school is intentional about creating learning teams where people come from different backgrounds, both you know, from a cultural and ethnic point of view, and also an industry and work experience and professional point of view. And I thought that that was really great. You know, it's a small group of people that you can build trust with, and just really rely on each other. I remember asking like the most basic questions to people in my learning team. For example, like the way that signs are you know, put up in the US are very different from like the road signs in India. And I would always be running around in circles and get lost navigating because it would be a different way. And I remember asking someone in my learning team just like to give me like a lowdown on all things like USA for Dummies. And he was so happy to do that for me. And to this day, he's like one of my closest friends. So I think being able to just have access to a small group of people that you spend so much time with is really helpful. The second resource, or just an event that happens at SOM, is called Voices. And I've been attending that, you know, very regularly, or as much as I can this year. And it's just a platform that allows people to come up and speak about their experiences, their whole like life story almost. And so attending that has been really powerful because it helps you realize that you're not the only one struggling with certain challenges, and it just opens up your mind to different perspectives. And it's been really helpful in making me feel more just part of something bigger, and giving me and just like making me aware of different people's backgrounds and experiences and challenges, both as internationals and Americans, and just realizing that we all face the same type of hurdles. So again, that's a great way to just, one, share your story, and two, just go in and listen to what other people have experienced. It's been really helpful. And then I think the last thing has, for me personally, that was really helpful in integrating in the US and just also like preserving my own culture, but finding that middle ground, was my roommates. I made a very intentional decision to stay with two American girls. One is an Asian American and one's an Indian American. And it's been the most special experience because just living with someone, what better way to really understand culture and exchange life experiences, and again, have someone to rely on when it, you know, when times get tough. So I think like these three ways have been really helpful for me. And I would really encourage anyone who plans to come to SOM to make use of these things, because it's a wonderful community.
That's great. Thank you so much. Those are great examples and great perspectives. And I'd like to, you know, maybe build on that a little bit, or maybe it's a little bit of a pivot. You were talking about a lot of different aspects of the experience at SOM, and one thing that you had been, a few people had commented on were you know, sort of integrating with the broader Yale community as well, and mostly on the academic front. Although I think Roshi, you had mentioned being a fellow at Jackson, which it sounds like has an academic component, but maybe it goes beyond it. But I'd love to get, you know, in addition to the electives you've all taken, I'd love to get a sense of some other things maybe you've been involved with. I know so rowing was one, and I think rugby maybe more SOM specific, but other things you've done, and maybe to connect it a little bit, are there any sort of cultural pieces that have kind of you've taken part in that are more expansive and integrated across the university more generally than just at SOM? So that was kind of a broad question, but I'd love to get a little sense of some of the other things that you're doing that's across the university more broadly. And so, Rashmi, sorry, you're a coach at Jackson, is that right? Okay, sorry, I didn't mean to get that wrong.
I can say more if you'd like about the crew club, which I think is a good cross-university experience.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So Yale has an important rowing tradition, right? People from the undergrad team go to the Olympics, but I am not somebody who could go to the Olympics probably ever in my life. And I wanted a more casual rowing experience, but one that would still have the ability to go in the water and so forth. And I was lucky enough to find it in this team, in the grad crew club. We have a lot of people who have never rowed before in their lives. And we do have people who rowed competitively for, we have a person from Princeton, from the Princeton rowing team undergrad. We have people from different Division I schools. So we have a very varied skill set. And to me, it was great for 3 reasons. The first is that I was able to meet people from other schools. So, for example, I've made a really good friend in a PhD student from psychology, right? Which would be difficult to meet in other circumstances. Or some people from the divinity school, architecture, etc. So I like that. A second component, which is good, is that it gives you this team experience and this other group of belonging that I think is important. And the third point is just exercise. It's my only exercise, so that's valuable. So I encourage people also to look for these opportunities to meet other people at graduate and professional schools. This semester, for example, the classes that I'm taking are for undergrads, all the classes. It's very funny because sometimes they ask me what year I'm in, and I say, no, I'm 30. And they think, they're asking whether I'm a sophomore or a junior. So that really boosts my ego. So I think it's good to have that interaction with people from different schools, and you meet very interesting and smart people.
Also happy to, oh, sorry, Hamon.
Go ahead, Rosie.
All right. Yeah, so happy to jump in. So apart from, I'm taking Jackson course, I'm coaching there, but actually one of the experiences where I was able to really build up relationships with people from different schools is an elective I'm taking at SOM. So we don't just get to take courses at people from other schools are also welcome to take courses at SOM. So I'm taking a course called Social Entrepreneurship Lab, where you actually develop a social enterprise idea. People actually sometimes go on to launch this. You work in cross-functional teams. And even when we're setting up the teams at the beginning, our professor really stresses on, pick people that you don't know, pick people with different perspectives, because you don't know how much you're going to learn. And if at the beginning of the semester, you told me that, this team of 8 people, where we have like an 18-year-old freshman, a 37-year-old Navy SEAL, people from the Global Affairs School, people from like the public health school, people from music, and told us that we would come together and like do really cool things. I might have been a bit confused, but it's actually been a really cool way where we've not only built up a bit of a community, but been able to work together in like really cool things. And that has, for all of us, opened up some avenues. So for example, we had like a really lovely Friendsgiving dinner where, one of our team members like hosted in his house by the water, and it was like really beautiful. And we had about like 20-25 people. And so sometimes even those opportunities are within the walls that you might be in, and not necessarily even having to look outside. So even within like the classes that you might be in, a lot of these people are already.
Sure. Thank you. Just to add on to what Renato and Roshini's points. On top of the academic resources in a border university, I also recommend students to checking out some of the part-time opportunities that offer in many departments in the university. As I mentioned, I work as a part-time for entire first year in the Peabody Museum. And I think that was a great experiences because I had the opportunity to work on, to actually touch all the collections listed in the Peabody Museum. Because currently the Peabody Museum is in renovation. It's estimated to reopen in 2024, but now they are having all the connections in the West Campus. So I also recommend if any of the candidate would had a visit to West Campus. It was really cool. And at the end of my part-time, I had an opportunity, to have a private tour inside the West Campus where they hold they hold all the collections in the Peabody Museum. And it was, to me, it was not only a part-time experiences, but also a historical experiences to understand, to have a exploration of all the cultures from the Natural History Museum. So I think, there are more than, I think there are more than hundreds, I mean, probably less than 100 opportunities offered by many departments in the university. There's opportunity at the Sci-City Innovation Center. You can be a part-time there. You can also be a part-time in the undergraduate department. So I think I definitely recommend taking that opportunity to explore the university in not just academically, but also in different perspective. And the better thing is the school gonna pay for your time. So that's a good thing. So yeah.
That's great. Thank you. It's never a bad thing when you get paid on top of everything else. And yeah, and Hamang, you mentioned this, but the Peabody Museum it's the Natural History Museum. So sort of dinosaurs and gemstones. It's really a fantastic collection. It's physically located across the street from the School of Management, although as you noted, it's under renovation until 2024 right now.
Yes, and another thing I want to mention for those who are joining SOM starting this year, because you're gonna experience this a very cool cafe in the Peabody Museum. So you don't only need to stay study in the SOM, but also you can go cross street and study in the Peabody Museum with all the dinosaurs. So that's gonna be fun.
It sounds like a fun opportunity and pretty unique environment to be able to do that. That's great. I see we're actually about 3/4 of the way through, and there's much more to get to. And one thing we haven't got to, we talked a little bit about sort of the academic piece. I talked a little bit about the sort of the cultural piece and the sort of the community aspects, both at SOM and more broadly. Obviously, another important part of the experience is the career piece. And you all, I think, were wonderful to share your sort of both pre and post SOM, your backgrounds, and then your post SOM sort of aspirations. But I'd love to get a sense from you about sort of the process, and for each of you, it might have been a little different, a process of kind of arriving at those post MBA goals, and maybe the ways in which the school helped prepare you for that, and what the role that the way that unfolded for you in terms of your career search. So any thoughts on that sort of the career piece would be helpful. I'm sure those who are participating and attending today are interested in that aspect of your experience as well.
Sure, I can kick us off. For me, the recruiting, I mean, like the first things first. I mean, I am international. It's like I would need sponsorship. So I mean, call me a pragmatic German, but us like first of all looking at the places that would sponsor. So that was kind of the first start of the recruiting journey. And then within that subset, you would start to network. You would start to look at places that was particularly interesting. And that's why I thought, or I was very like pleasantly surprised how how great the SOM community and the wider Yale like network, alumni network was, because I think there's only maybe 3 or 4 people that didn't respond to kind of me reaching out and asking for help or asking for any kind of connection. And even if people didn't have or didn't think they were the right connection, they always at least refer me to someone who may have been helpful, who can talk to me about the specific role, about the specific company, and either like refer me onto their recruiters or give me a bit of an insight or make me understand what they are focusing on and how this may or may not be the right location or the right kind of job for me. And in the beginning, even though I said I wanted to pivot into biotech and pharmaceuticals, again, I think like as an international, you always kind of play the game of, you apply to, you kind of spread out hedge your bets, spread out your recruiting journey a bit as well. So I looked into tech as well. And there I found so many people who were willing to talk, again, who were in similar positions of, looking into sponsorship, looking into the right roles while, still being able to maintain your visa. So I think that was really helpful. And people, again, like people were open, people were happy to share. And I think what people oftentimes forget is like, yes, SOM is a smaller or a younger school with a smaller alumni network, but people oftentimes forget that we also have the parent institution. And Yale is plenty old, and there's plenty people who love to talk to you. If they see that big Y on your LinkedIn account, they are always more than happy to talk to you, even if they graduated, I don't know, 40 years ago. They're always very happy to talk to you.
That's great. Thank you so much, Yasha. And I don't know if anyone else has thoughts specifically on sort of the career piece, the recruiting piece. You did talk, I mean, one thing in particular, I know, Renato, when you're talking about the alumni, in Mexico, I think of, like Joaquin Avila and Tito Vidal and others, like there's, there are lots of both SOM alumni and Yasha, your point, broader Yale alumni who are willing to help out. So any other thoughts on, the recruiting process for you? And maybe thinking about ways in which the alumni helped, or certainly career development office, or classmates or others, and things that you resources you leverage to help you in the process.
Sure. So I think the alumni network is valuable, but also just the opportunities that you get for being at Yale SOM without help from the alumni are very interesting, especially if you want to do a more structured recruiting route, right? So I also started looking for opportunities exclusively that would sponsor. And my idea was to be in the US for at least a few years after the MBA. And it surprised me that there are a lot of opportunities with these characteristics. It should be noted that they're not 100%. You will see jobs like in private equity, for example, in some investment funds, etc., that say full-time work authorization required. But I skip those, and that's that. But there are a lot of opportunities which have this full-time recruiting, full-time recruiting, which include sponsorship. And I think what you can leverage there is just resources that the school has. So the career development office is very helpful. The clubs are very helpful, the professional clubs. We have a club for consulting, we have a club for finance, we have a club for tech, we have a club for energy, right? Where you can go and hear from students who have been recruited into those fields, and they give you tips and they help you with the coffee chats and they help you case, etc. So that's very valuable as resources just to get you ready for action.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And I guess a question came in that asked specifically about, it talks about the recent recession. I don't know if the pandemic as well, in terms of sponsorship and opportunities for international students and obviously you only know what you've experienced, so I don't know if you have a sort of broader perspective, but have you a sense about whether things have changed, if it's become more difficult, or how have you found that, the experience from that perspective? And again, you might not have any, again, what you've experienced yourself, so I don't know if you have any sense of sort of how the recession or how even the pandemic has changed things on that front.
I can talk to, I guess, like biotech and tech while I was looking. I think on biotech and pharma, like it's almost increasing. And even though sometimes on some of these job postings, even though it says they do require full-time or like full work authorizations, that's not always a hard no. So if you network well, at the end of the day, if you have someone there to kind of pick up your course, you will definitely be able to even break through that barrier. And even with that, I found, especially coming back after my internship, that more of the places who last year weren't willing to sponsor are now sponsoring for full-time positions. So maybe this is just like biotech and pharma related, but the big pharma players are definitely reconsidering, especially in the current environment. Like pharma and biotech is doing relatively well, given that's pandemic induced, but there's a lot more than there was last year, at least for my kind of anecdotal evidence.
That's great. Thank you for that perspective. We have less than 10 minutes left, so I want to try and might jump around a little bit, and I'm going to shift gears somewhat and maybe combine. I've got a number of questions that have come in about. We've talked about SOM, we talked about Yale, but a number of questions have come in about New Haven, and maybe combine a few and see if we can cover. One is more just what it's like to be in New Haven generally. Another question, maybe more specifically, what's a typical weekend day like in New Haven? And then a third piece that actually asked about housing, and off campus versus on campus, people with families. So maybe I'm going to try and maybe kind of fold those all in together and ask about sort of living and studying in New Haven generally, but also if you have any kind of sort of housing thoughts as well. I think the attendees would be grateful for any insights you have on that front as well.
So happy to speak a little bit about like my housing search. So coming in, obviously, I was coming in from Kenya and have time to do some of the this places. So I would say that SOM students generally live in two main neighborhoods. There's downtown and then East Rock. There are also some, most people live off campus and find housing their own. There are a few people I know who've actually got housing in the graduate school housing. So that is an option if that's something that you're interested in. What I found super helpful is actually, as you're admitted, current students will share a lot of resources. So at some point, somebody shared a spreadsheet of, recommended landlords and was, where the apartments were. So I basically reached out. I knew that, I had a car and I wanted a place with a garage. And so I filtered my search that way, reached out to some landlords, and basically students. I knew I could trust that. And I know that other people also use that spreadsheet to find, for example, room and use that as a way to kind of think about where to be. Being in is definitely interesting. I like, as Yasha mentioned, it is easily get around. So just kind of walked in, like where I live, there's a small grocery store right around the corner, get like groceries that I need. There's also like a van that I think the school organizes to go for like bigger grocery runs. There's a lot of stuff that's like with neighborhood that we can do. And because there's like, whether you're in East Rock or in downtown, there's going to be quite a lot of other students living around you. So it's easier to form that community, other, SOM student community where you live.
Great, thanks so much, Roshni. And there were a little bit of a connection issue that I had. I don't know if others did, but I think we got the bulk of it. I really appreciate that. Any other thoughts? We have maybe 5 minutes left. Any other thoughts about sort of living New Haven, sort of the housing aspect? I think Roshni gave a good sense of sort of the East Rock versus downtown, some of the resources that exist on the housing front. But any other thoughts about sort of either that or New Haven more generally?
Just I would add, I think Roshni made a good summary. Most people do live off campus, and I think just consider this, and it's part of the social environment as well, because the on-campus resources have some limitations in terms of hosting and events. Also, I would say that New Haven in general is a town which does have a decent amount of restaurants. It's not New York, it's not Chicago, but it does have some restaurants. It's known for its New Haven style pizza. So in case people are interested in that, some people will debate whether it's good or not, but that's what it's known for. And there are also some bars and I think like 2 would be considered clubs. There's a lot of events that happen at people's houses, so a lot of dinners, a lot of informal get-togethers, a lot of parties, and these are constant. You would be surprised, but every week there's at least, I don't know, 3 events or parties that everybody's invited to. So that's, I think, the general impression. And also, if you want to go to New York, just to consider, it is about 2 hours and 18 on the train. It costs $17.50 each leg. It's feasible for a weekend day. I do it sometimes. It is a bit of a journey.
Thanks so much. That's great. And I think it is, it is true that I think New York is so a reasonable distance away. I think my sense is that when students come, they have visions of being in New York every weekend, and I think it maybe is there's so much to do in New Haven, and also it's a little bit, it's maybe 2 hours or so away. So I think it maybe is once a month, or once or twice a semester, if not, maybe not even that.
We have almost every weekend, but I'm an outlier.
Is that right? That's impressive. We have just 2 minutes left, and as a maybe the last question, the attendees on this session are obviously thinking about an MBA, and I think for many, if not maybe most, thinking are likely making a transition from outside the U.S. to the States. For those of you who want to sort of take a moment to answer, I would love to get a sense of any advice you have for having done that transition in the recent past, for how, any advice you have for how to sort of make that successful and ease that transition from sort of outside the U.S. to the U.S. Any piece of advice you have for those who are sort of thinking about doing that transition themselves?
I would just say it's like lean. I mean, once you're in class, like lean as heavily on your learning team and your classmates as you can. You feel like, oh, I don't want to bother people, but people are more than happy to help because they realize, I mean, either if they are internationals who've already been here or like have established themselves here, so they know what it feels like, or they're, they're Americans, or they've lived here all their life and they can still relate and they're happy to help and share that with you. So even if it's, as silly as Nikki talked about, the street signs, but like down to like, hey, how do I open a bank account, to, I mean, what's the best moving company? Where do I look for apartments? Like, do I look on Facebook? Is it Craigslist? All these kind of things. Like, there'll be people to help you on that, whether it's in person, whether it's on our Slack channels. Is like, we have, if you think it's a stupid question, someone will have asked it. And if they haven't, then it's not a stupid question. So I think everyone's incredibly helpful. And whether it's ASL, whether it's admissions, whether it's your colleagues and your friends, everyone's, always a resource. Use that. Don't be shy to ask questions.
Yeah, 100% second that. My advice would be come in with an open mind, rely on people exactly as Yasha said. The community is here to help, and it's a safe space to be vulnerable. And also another just word of advice is be proud of where you're from, be proud of your culture, your heritage. Participating in class can sometimes feel daunting because, you think that a lot of it is in the American context, so you can't really relate, but that's not true at all. There's so much that we have to offer from our international experiences and backgrounds. So just remember to really hold and be hold that at the high value that it is, and be proud of where you're from.
That's great. That's both wonderful thoughts, and maybe that's a good place to end with. I know we're right at the hour mark, so I just want to take a moment to thank all of you, current students, panelists, for your thoughts, your insights, your perspectives. really appreciate the time you've given and what you've shared. And I hope the attendees found it valuable. I know I did. And as I was saying before we started, I always find these panels to be really, really fun, interesting for myself on a selfish level, because I love to hear all what you're doing, all the interesting things that are happening on campus. So thank you very much for that. For those who are attending, thank you for taking the time to be here, for spending part of your day with us. I know this was student focused. We do have, if you're looking and thinking about applying and going through the process, we do have events coming up that are application oriented, including, I think, next Thursday, my colleague Laurel Gradman and I will be doing a kind of our best application advice. I think it's maybe at noon next Thursday, so feel free to join for that. And then we have other Q&As and other workshops as well, so that hopefully will help you prepare your best application for our potentially our round 2 deadline in January, or maybe our round 3 deadline in April. But in the meantime, thank you again for attending. Thank you to the panelists, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.